I should also note that the provincial auditor conducted a review of IO's AFP projects. That was done in December of 2014. The AG at that time, the provincial AG at that time, reviewed some 74 projects and concluded that the province, in effect, paid almost $8 billion more than would have been the case under the traditional procurement approach. IO doesn't deny that. In fact, they agree with the AG's conclusions. However, they have asserted that across the same 74 projects, IO was able to shift more than $15 billion of project risks to the public sector, or sorry, to the private sector, away from the public sector. In effect, the province has paid $8 billion to shift $15 billion in risks, and therefore, according to IO, provincial taxpayers are $7 billion better off for it. The provincial AG also acknowledged in her report that the AFP projects were, for the most part, on time and on budget, but there were issues with IO's methodology, and IO has subsequently acknowledged those deficiencies, which have led to improvements in the approach, the value for money approach. The following chart illustrates for you, Mr. Mayor, provides a summary, I should say, of the established or the estimated capital costs of the Gardiner Rehab. The total costs are expressed in nominal dollars, as spent dollars. They amount to approximately $2.6 billion. And when you factor in the expected contributions from the federal government, our estimated net cost to the city is in the order of $1.7 billion. These are preliminary estimated capital costs, and they are based on Class C estimates. With respect to our 10-year capital program, we expect to require $1.4 billion over the next 10 years. The bulk of that capital requirement will come in 2023, 2024, when a substantial completion payment estimated at $1.2 billion will be required. This next slide illustrates for you the overall estimated contract value with a 30-year concession. Again, the bulk of the capital requirement will come in 2023, 2024, when a substantial payment representing 85% of the capital cost is to be made. The remainder of the contract value is amortized over a 30-year period and will commence in 2024. We're recommending that IO be retained as our procurement lead. IO has significant success with AFP procurement processes and the preparation of project contracts. Also, bidders across the province are now familiar with IO and its processes and documents, which should lead to much better outcomes. I should note that IO is a nonprofit entity, and its fees represent the recovery of its costs, and there is no built-in profit margin that's added to the fee. We estimate that the upset limit of that fee will be sufficient to cover their services, and that amount is relatively, we think, is reasonable relative to the $3 billion plus overall contract amount. In fact, if we had to replicate IO services in-house or acquire those services from another third party, the cost would be substantially higher than those estimated. Finally, Mr. Mayor, we are also recommending that additional advisors be retained for technical support with an upward or cost estimate of about $40 million. We're recommending all of these costs, as well as the financial estimates that I've highlighted, be referred to Budget Committee for its consideration as part of the 2016 budget approval process.
We did undertake public consultation as directed by Council, and the public consultation was really to provide some input in terms of the implementation of our strategic plan and the potential use of a P3 model for its implementation. So the consultation also included an Ipsos-Reid survey of 1,000 residents across the city, an online survey of over 230 respondents, and 2 public consultation sessions. Highlighted on this slide are some of the feedback that we received. By and large, the general feeling from the public was that they wanted to ensure that the rehabilitation of the Gardiner was completed on time and on budget, and that the project delivery was indifferent so far as the public was concerned, whether it be delivered through conventional procurement or via P3. Also wanted to make sure that the construction work is undertaken is of high quality and to minimize traffic congestion. In terms of a project procurement governance structure, this is what we propose. So at the bottom, basically the three series of boxes represent the project team, representing city staff, Infrastructure Ontario, and the external advisors that Joe mentioned. That project team would be reporting to three division heads, myself as the Executive Director, Engineering Construction Services, Steve Buckley as the General Manager of Transportation Services, and Joe Frag as the Executive Director of Corporate Finance, who would then be reporting to our City Manager, Deputy City Manager Cluster B, and the Deputy City Manager and CFO, who ultimately would be reporting to this committee and then Council. Project timelines. From the standpoint of where we are now, we'd be looking at preparing the procurement documents this year. Then we would then proceed to the procurement of the preferred consortia in 2016 with a recommendation of a contract award to Council in 2017. Construction could begin as early as 2018 with a completion schedule somewhere between 2023 and 2024. So the recommendation just in the report summarized on this slide. First and foremost, implement the strategic rehabilitation plan using a design, build, finance, operate, and maintain procurement approach. Submit the business case to P3 Canada and Infrastructure Canada requesting 1/3 funding. Make a formal submission to the province seeking 1/3 funding from the province. Enter an agreement with Infrastructure Ontario for assistance with the procurement approach. And then submit our proposed cash flows and funding sources as part of the 2016 budget process, and then ultimately report back to this committee and Council on the results of the procurement process and to seek authority to award the contract before we proceed to design and construction. That concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.